Tomorrow is the March for Science, a nationwide demonstration in which scientists and science enthusiasts like myself will stand up for, well, science, I guess. Woo, science. Like many grassroots movements, this one had a good deal of controversy and infighting attached to it since the beginning. So I wanted to go over some of the problems because they raise some interesting issues for the world at large, and also because I just want to try to sort out my own feelings about the march. One of the first issues with the March for Science was about diversity. Originally, the organizers expressed a desire to be inclusive and make sure that women, people of color, and other marginalized groups were well represented in the march and in the organizing. But this made some people, like Steven Pinker, quite upset. Pinker thinks that being inclusive is anti-science and too political. So the march organizers walked back the inclusive talk in an attempt to make Steven Pinker like them better, which seems to have worked. But that brought up another issue, which was whether or not the march was political at all. The organizers said that it isn't, which I found really odd. It's clearly inspired by the budget cuts and anti-science nonsense coming straight out of the Trump administration and wholeheartedly supported by the Republican-dominated Congress. Marching for science in the face of that is blatantly political. The organizers are succumbing to the myth that science is apolitical. And maybe even above politics. A simple error that everyone really needs to just stop making. Consider the fact that we have known about global warming for about a century, and yet it is still such a politicized topic that 85% of conservative Republicans don't understand that the Earth is warming due to human activity, compared to just 21% of liberal Democrats. That's as starkly political as it gets, whether you like it or not. Then we need to talk about the fact that science has been used to seriously hurt and kill marginalized people in the past and unfortunately still today. You probably already know about historical cases like the Tuskegee syphilis study, but did you know that in 1997, the US government was funding a study on pregnant women with HIV in which some of the women were giving placebos and treatments known not to stop spreading the disease to their fetuses knowingly. And in 2014, pharmaceutical companies were recruiting homeless people to test experimental drugs. People, even scientists, seem to get confused over the alleged objectivity of science. The scientific process was developed as a way to evaluate data as objectively as possible. And the reason for that is because humans are inherently, permanently subjective. Even scientists. A good scientist knows that they have biases, and that's why things like control groups and peer review exist. That's why things like ethical standards exist. We wouldn't need any of that if scientists were as perfectly objective as many people seem to believe. And that's why the march does need to be diverse, to make sure that women, people of color, people with disabilities, people of minority religions, and other marginalized groups know that they belong too. They belong in the sciences, they belong at the march, and their concerns deserve to be heard. They need to know that organized scientists care just as much about the loss of science funding as they do about the proliferation of anti-scientific garbage like stop and frisk laws, or the serious political and scientific disaster that is the city of Flint not having clean drinking water for years. And that's also why the march is and has to be political. The funding cuts are because of Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress. The hits to climate research are because of Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress. The proliferation of outright lies is because of Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress. If scientists are going to march for science and reality and facts, then they'll be marching against Republicans. They'll be political. And finally, that's why the people marching should have a goal other than just to march, to raise awareness. The Republicans are aware of what they're doing. They're proud of it, in fact. They hate science. They hate facts that are inconvenient to them. I hope that people marching realize that the work isn't done after the demonstration. That's actually when things are just getting started. The best thing a demonstration can do is to motivate the people in the demonstration and the people watching the demonstration to take real action. And that's why I love the efforts of groups like 314 Action, who are hoping to encourage more scientists to run for office. If you care about what's happening, make sure you're following through and actually doing something about it. You don't necessarily have to run for office, but at least maybe visit the people who are in office, the people who are supposed to be working for you, and tell them how you feel about these issues. I'll leave you with a recommendation to read a piece over on The Root that includes contributions from some really awesome scientists who speak out on behalf of marginalized people in the sciences, explaining some of the problems with the march much better than I can. So I'll include a link over on my Patreon. As for me, I will probably be at the march. And if I am there, I'm going to be there as an unapologetically political being. Fuck Donald Trump, fuck congressional Republicans, fuck any politician who devalues science for their own purposes.